Beneath the broken clouds of a burning colony world, Admiral Sarek watched the last human transport disintegrate in his fleet's crossfire. The plasma blooms painted his flagship's viewing deck in an amber glow, yet he barely blinked. Another planet reduced to ash, another defiant species bowing before the Zorathian Empire's will. His second-in-command murmured something about resistance pockets, but Sarek waved him off with the faintest curl of his fingers. "They scatter like rodents," he said, voice a low purr reverberating through the command bridge. "Rodents with fire sticks." A few of his officers chuckled, the sound sharp in the recycled air. Even after decades of war, humans amused them, stubborn, primitive, predictably doomed. Reports scrolled across the holotable before him. Orbital control secure, civilian centers in ruins, remaining militia forces fleeing underground. The standard arc of conquest, played out countless times before. Yet Sarek felt bored. His clawed hand drummed against the console as if itching for novelty. Perhaps that was why he ordered the strike on the blue planet called Earth. He hadn't meant it as a grand gesture. Merely a final spark before this endless war sputtered out. The last world carrying their sentimental myths, their ancestral soil. Cripple it, and humanity would surely collapse into irrelevance. Some of his junior officers hesitated when the order left his lips. Earth was different, they whispered. He could hear it in the tightening of their voices, see it in the way their tails flicked behind them. He turned to them slowly, eyes narrowing in faint amusement. "You fear their homeworld?" he asked, voice still quiet. One officer shifted under his gaze. "Reports indicate heavier fortifications, Admiral. Defensive networks we haven't charted. Perhaps we should reconnoiter before." Sarek laughed softly, a sound like cracking ice. "You think they've hidden miracles under their oceans? The species bleeds at every border, and you cower at folk tales?" He leaned closer, letting the words cut. "Order the fleet. Earth falls next." His command deck obeyed, though unease lingered like static in the air. Hours later, as his fleet translated into Earth's outer orbit, Sarek expected panic. He expected desperate pleas, a chaotic defense, the usual mixture of courage and futility he had come to associate with human resistance. Instead, the planet below moved with unnerving coordination. Civilian transports launched in tight formation toward subterranean hangars. Defense satellites powered up without the frantic scramble he was used to seeing. One of his tacticians frowned at the readings. "They're too organized, Admiral. No chaos in their response." Sarek dismissed it with a flick of his claws, but irritation pricked at the edges of his calm. "Desperation breeds order," he said, though he wasn't sure he believed it. Then came the first ripple of strangeness. A single vessel lifted from the planet's surface, massive, angular, bristling with emitters his scanners couldn't identify. Not a battleship, by any known configuration. It ascended slowly, deliberately, as if unconcerned with the hostile fleet surrounding it. His gunnery crews awaited orders uneasy. "An evacuation arc," Sarek guessed aloud. "Destroy it." Weapons locked on. Plasma lances roared and vanished, absorbed against some kind of barrier shimmering faintly around the vessel's hull. No detonation. No hull breach. The ship continued its ascent, implacable, almost disdainful. On his bridge, silence reigned for the first time in Sareka's career. Then the transmission came. A human voice, calm as winter rain, broadcast across every frequency his fleet used. "Cease fire," it said evenly. "Withdraw beyond lunar orbit. This is your only warning. No threat. No bluster. Just words delivered with the composure of someone giving weather reports." Sareka's officers erupted in laughter. Relief, mockery, arrogance. They drowned each other out in a chorus of disbelief. One sneered something about human theatrics. Another suggested cutting open the mysterious vessel to see what toys it carried inside. Sarek said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ship now hanging in high orbit, vast enough to eclipse stars behind it. Sensors kept failing to read its energy output. Its hull emitted no heat, no familiar radiation signatures. It was as though the thing existed behind a veil of reality itself. The voice repeated once more. Withdraw. Sarek leaned forward, claws tapping the armrest. The unknown scratched at his composure, like thorns. Yet pride burned hotter. Target it again, he ordered softly. A second volley surged outward, streaking toward the enigmatic vessel. For half a heartbeat, Sarek almost expected the same passive absorption. Instead, the ship moved. One shot. Not plasma. Not missiles. Just a beam of pale light arcing silently across the void. It touched his nearest cruiser, and the vessel simply ceased. No explosion. No debris field. Just gone, as though erased from existence. The laughter on the bridge curdled into breathless silence. Sarek felt the moment like ice water down his spine. His tail stilled. His second-in-command muttered something too soft to catch. Somewhere deep in his instincts, older than empire or technology, something whispered that they had made a mistake. The human voice returned once, calm as ever. Final warning. Sarek stared at the flagship blotting out the stars, and for the first time since the war began, he felt the faint, unfamiliar weight of doubt settle across his chest. Because in the silence after that single shot, he realized the humans hadn't scrambled, hadn't panicked, hadn't fought like prey cornered at last. They had been waiting, and as the flagship's shadow grew across his fleet, Sarek began to wonder if the endless war he thought he understood had only just begun. Sarek stood rigid at the center of his command deck, the glow of tactical holos crawling across his face like restless ghosts. The human flagship hung before his fleet, silent and still, as though mocking them. The absence of movement unnerved him more than any weapon could. It radiated control, purpose, and something else he could not name, a kind of predatory patience. His officers whispered behind him, their arrogance dimmed, but not extinguished. One muttered that the humans had merely stumbled across lost technology from some extinct species. Another claimed the flagship was surely fragile if they kept it hidden until now. Sarek listened to none of it. He had commanded campaigns across 50 worlds, ground civilizations into dust beneath the boots of a Zorathian empire. But this felt different. The transmission from Earth repeated itself across every channel. Withdraw. Final warning. The voice carried no rage, no hatred, only the steady cadence of inevitability. As though the humans were not offering mercy, but instructions. Admiral, his second-in-command said, voice lower than usual. Orders? Sarek did not answer immediately. His gaze drifted to the vessel again, to its surface that revealed nothing, reflected nothing. It looked less like a warship and more like some deep-sea creature risen from abyssal darkness, its full shape impossible to read until it chose to strike. Advance, he ordered finally, though quieter than intended. Pride forced the words from him. We test its limits. The fleet moved, though not as eagerly as before. Even the gunnery crews hesitated, claws hovering above firing runes. They all remembered the cruiser erased by a single shot. The flagship reacted instantly. No energy build-up, no charging sequence. Just another cold, white lance of light flicking across the void. A destroyer vanished mid-flight, leaving only silence in its absence. Then a second beam, erasing a carrier before its pilots could even launch. Precision beyond comprehension, each strike chosen, deliberate, undeniable. On the command deck, no one laughed this time. Sarek felt the weight of every vanished crew echo in the quiet that followed. He turned to his officers and saw it at last, fear, sharp and real, eating through their postures like acid. One of them, young, scales too bright for this war, spoke before decorum could stop him. We should retreat. His voice cracked like a fault line. This is beyond us. Sarek wanted to snarl, to remind them of the empire they served, of the centuries of conquest behind them. Yet the words withered before they reached his tongue. His instincts, the same instincts that had guided him through decades of victory, told him the officer was right. But before he could speak, another voice joined the debate, this one calm, analytical, from the science division. Admiral, she said, Their technology, it surpasses anything in our archives. Energy output beyond measurable scale. Defensive systems rendering our weapons irrelevant. If this vessel is singular, perhaps it can be destroyed through concentrated fire, but she hesitated. If it is not singular, if there are more? The implications settled over the deck like falling ash. Sarek finally broke his silence. Summon the High Council. Within the hour, the alien empire's ruling circle filled the hollow chamber aboard his flagship. Regal, adorned, brimming with the confidence of rulers who had never truly known defeat, they regarded Sareka's report with open skepticism. A single human ship, one counselor scoffed, jeweled claws tapping his armrest. You would have us believe primitives threaten the Empire itself? Sarek met his gaze steadily. You did not see it in action. Another counselor leaned forward, voice sharp. Perhaps you exaggerate to excuse your hesitation. Finish the conquest. Crush Earth, as ordered. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber, arrogance clinging to them like armor. Sarek felt something break inside him. Not fear, not yet, but the first crack in certainty. He thought of the vanished ships, the calm human voice, the surgical precision of their retaliation. They knew we were coming, he said slowly, words heavy as stone. This was no desperate defense. This was prepared. Some counselors shifted uneasily. Others laughed, dismissive to the end. Prepared? For us? Let them bring all they have. The Empire spans 1,000 systems. One world will not unmake it. But Sarek saw the pattern now, threads weaving together where others saw only pride. The humans had bled at the fringes, retreated here, lost there, always ceding ground, yet never quite breaking. As though luring the Empire deeper, closer, until Earth itself became the stage for something far larger than survival. When the Council dissolved hours later, some mocking, some silent, Sarek remained alone in the dim, hollow chamber. He called up human war footage from the archives. Primitive images at first, grainy cities consumed in nuclear fire, soldiers clawing through mud and smoke with knives and rifles, ancient wars fought before a species had even left their oceans. Then more modern battles, tanks, drones, orbital strikes tearing continents apart. Century after century of conflict, each generation birthing weapons faster, deadlier, more precise. And then he understood. The humans had never known peace. Not truly. They had practiced war the way others practiced religion, endlessly, fanatically, shaping every innovation toward it until it became instinct itself. Sarek watched silent footage of mushroom clouds blooming over dead oceans and felt, for the first time in his long career, something colder than doubt creep along his scales. The human flagship's voice returned once more across the comms. No demand for surrender. No threat of pursuit. Only the same measured tone. Leave now. There will not be another warning. Sarek stared at the images flickering before him, wars without mercy, without pause, without end, and realized the truth too late. The Empire had not cornered prey. It had woken predators. The human counterattack began without preamble, without speeches or banners or declarations of vengeance. One moment the Zorathian fleet held orbit over Earth. The next moment entire sectors of space erupted with precision strikes. Wormholes opened across alien-held systems like wounds tearing through reality, human fleets pouring out with uncanny synchronization. Admiral Sarek watched the reports cascade across his command screens, each line another loss. Supply depots gone. Outposts overrun. Shipyards burning before the Empire even realized they were under assault. It felt less like war and more like a guillotine falling in slow motion, inevitable and merciless. His officers shouted orders, recalibrated defenses, begged for reinforcements that would never arrive in time. The High Council still refused to believe the scale of the threat, demanding evidence, demanding victories that no longer existed. Their arrogance, once a source of unity, now strangled them. Sarek alone understood what was happening. The humans had never sought to match the Empire in size or numbers. They had studied, endured, prepared in silence while the Zorathians mistook patience for weakness. And now that preparation moved like a blade through the Empire's veins. He stood at the center of his failing fleet and felt the weight of every order he had ever given pressing down like lead. He thought of the officers who had laughed at the human warning, of the counselors who had dismissed his cautions, of himself and his own pride when the first cruiser vanished under the flagship's pale beam. The humans came in waves, but never wastefully. Each strike severed a node of Empire control, communications, logistics, command centers, until entire systems found themselves isolated, vulnerable, paralyzed. Sarek recognized the strategy with grim clarity. He had used it himself against weaker enemies. On the command deck, his second-in-command approached quietly. The young officer's arrogance had burned away, leaving something leaner behind. "Admiral," he said, voice low, "if this continues, the Empire will fall within the month." Sarek did not look at him. His gaze lingered on the tactical displays, on the red markers spreading like infection through once secure territories. "No," he said finally. "Not the month. The week." The admission tasted like ash, but it was the truth. Across the galaxy, human fleets advanced without hesitation, yet with unsettling restraint. Civilian centers were spared. Surrenders accepted instantly. No excess destruction, no chaos, only the relentless disassembly of imperial power. It was war stripped of cruelty, and somehow that made it worse. On the fourth day, the humans reached the Empire's inner colonies. Planetary governors surrendered before the fleets even entered orbit. Entire legions laid down arms rather than face the silent flagship that seemed to appear wherever resistance gathered. Sarek began to notice something else, something that made the fear in his officers deepen into unease. The humans fought without hatred. They offered no taunts, no ultimatums beyond the initial warning. When battles ended, they collected their wounded, repaired infrastructure, even delivered food to starving civilian sectors left behind by the Empire's retreat. It was not conquest. It was replacement. The High Council finally fractured. Some demanded negotiations, others swore vengeance even as system after system slipped away. Assassinations erupted among the ruling elite, old alliances crumbling under the strain of impending defeat. Sarek received a summons on the seventh day. What remained of the council wanted him to lead a final defense at the capital world itself. He agreed, though not out of loyalty. Some part of him, buried under years of victory and pride, needed to see how this ended. The defense lasted 3 hours. When the human fleets arrived, they moved with the same precision as always. Wormholes unfolded above the capital like the petals of some vast, mechanical flower, and from them came the flagship, its surface catching the light of 3 suns as though crowned by fire. Imperial cruisers fell back in disarray. Defense platforms fired wildly before vanishing under that same cold beam of erasure. Sarek commanded what ships remained with the discipline of long habit, but he knew it was theater. The humans were not even fighting them anymore. They were dismantling them. Then the flagship spoke again, that same calm voice carried across every channel. "Cease resistance. This war is over." 3 words repeated in every dialect known to the Empire. Some ships surrendered instantly. Others fought on and were erased within seconds. Sarek gave the order to stand down before the last of his fleet could follow them into nothingness. Silence fell over the capital system as the human flagship descended toward the council's spire. Sarek watched it from his ruined bridge, exhaustion settling deep into his bones. Around him, officers moved like sleepwalkers through the aftermath, faces gray with disbelief. The war that had consumed generations had ended in less than 10 days. Sarek found no relief in its ending. Only a hollow question echoing through the quiet. What would the humans do now that they held the galaxy's throat in their hands? When the summons came for him to meet their commanders, he felt something unexpected, almost like dread. Not of death or defeat, but of what kind of victors these humans would choose to become. Admiral Sarek entered the council spire under armed escort, though the humans carried themselves less like conquerors than wardens of some grave responsibility. The air inside felt too still, too clean, a sharp contrast to the chaos outside where Imperial banners burned and surrender beacons pulsed over shattered defense lines. The human commander awaited him in what had once been the Empire's Hall of Governance. A tall figure in plain gray armor, helmet tucked beneath one arm, face unreadable. No medals, no symbols of rank, only the quiet authority of someone who no longer needed them. "You commanded the defense," the human said, voice calm as the recording Sarek had heard before the war ended. Sarek inclined his head, though pride kept his spine straight. "I did." "You ordered the surrender." "I did." Neither spoke for several breaths. Around them, aides from both sides processed prisoners, routed supplies, rebuilt comm relays. The Empire's capital had become a staging ground for something new, though Sarek could not yet name it. At last the human said, "We have no interest in ruling your people." The words startled Sarek more than threats would have. "You destroy our fleets, topple our rulers, shatter our armies, and then walk away." "Not walk away," the human corrected. "We will not repeat your empire's mistake. Occupation breeds rebellion. Governance breeds dependence. We will oversee disarmament, ensure no resurgence of aggression. After that, your worlds will govern themselves under a unified council. Yours, not ours." Sarek studied the man's face and saw no triumph there. Only exhaustion tempered by resolve, like someone fulfilling a duty rather than enjoying a victory. It unsettled him more than gloating would have. "You could have exterminated us," Sarek said finally. The human's eyes did not waver. "We don't fight for extermination. We fight to end wars." Sarek considered the weight of that. His own species had expanded for centuries under banners of destiny and conquest, never questioning the cost. The humans had crushed that ambition in less than 2 weeks, and now seemed burdened by the very power they wielded. A young officer approached the human commander, whispered a report. Sarek caught fragments, resistance remnants dissolving, border systems surrendering without conflict, pirate bands offering allegiance to human patrols. The galaxy was pivoting, realigning itself around this new center of gravity. When the officer left, Sarek asked the question coiling in his mind since the first cruiser vanished under that pale beam. "Was this your plan from the beginning? To draw us in, let us think we were winning?" The human considered before answering. "Your empire forced us to unite. Forced us to finish projects we hoped would never leave the prototype stage. We didn't want this war. But once it came, we refused to lose." Sarek remembered the archives, the centuries of human conflicts, each bloodier than the last, forging a civilization both fractured and relentless. He wondered if the Empire had ever truly understood the enemy it had awakened. Outside the hall, the human flagship loomed over the city like a second sun, silent, implacable. Sarek realized it had fired only when provoked, never first. A weapon of precision, not terror. The human commander turned toward him. "You will lead the Provisional Council on this world. Maintain order. Coordinate with our envoys. There will be no executions, no purges. Stability matters more than vengeance." It was mercy, but it felt heavier than chains. Sarek understood why. Mercy meant survival. Survival meant memory, and memory meant living under the knowledge of defeat. He inclined his head slowly. "I will keep order." The human studied him for a long moment. "Learn from this, Admiral. The next war doesn't have to happen." When the meeting ended, Sarek stepped outside the spire. The city stretched before him, smoke rising from some districts, others already humming with reconstruction. Human and Zorathian crews worked side by side clearing debris, restoring power grids, distributing rations. No occupation troops marching through streets, no banners claiming victory. Only the relentless efficiency of people who wanted this finished. For the first time, Sarek wondered if the Empire's fall might spare more lives than its survival ever had. Days passed. Systems once loyal to the Empire sent envoys not to resist, but to negotiate integration into the new council network the humans were building. The speed of capitulation startled even Sarek. Without the fleets, Without the fear of imperial reprisal, most worlds simply stopped obeying. In the evenings, he watched the human flagship from his quarters atop the spire. Its dark surface reflected stars like a vast, patient eye. It never left orbit, yet reports spoke of identical ships appearing across former imperial space, enforcing ceasefires, dismantling weapon stockpiles, ending centuries-old border wars as though sweeping dust from a table. One night, Sarek asked the human liaison stationed with him, "How many of those ships exist?" The man answered without looking up from his data slate, "Enough." The war had not merely ended, it had erased the possibility of resistance. On the 10th day after the surrender, the human commander addressed both former Empire citizens and surviving counselors via planetary broadcast. Sarek watched from the hall's edge as the man spoke. "We did not seek this war. We will not remain as conquerors. But understand this, the age of empires ends today. No single power will ever again hold the galaxy hostage to ambition." His voice carried the same calm as the first warning, yet beneath it ran iron certainty. Sarek felt the truth settle over everyone listening. This was not occupation. This was reordering. The humans had ended the Empire, yes, but they had also ended the era that birthed it. After the broadcast, as the commander prepared to depart aboard the flagship, Sarek approached him one last time. "What will you do now?" The man paused at the ramp, shadows cutting his face into sharp lines. "We'll rebuild what was broken. Watch the borders. Prepare for whoever watches us from the dark between stars." Sarek frowned. "You think others will come?" A faint, humorless smile touched the human's mouth. "They always do." Then he boarded the flagship, and within the hour it rose into the upper atmosphere, engines whispering thunder across the capital before vanishing into orbit. Sarek stood on the spire balcony long after it disappeared from view. The Empire was gone, the war ended, yet the galaxy felt poised on the edge of something larger than conquest or surrender. Because the humans had awakened, and nothing would ever put them back to sleep.